8:10. Spare a thought this morning for Nigel Farage. Only a few months ago he appeared to be headed to the Commons, and he was predicting that UKIP would hold the balance of power. Well, as you'll know, the party did get an MP elected, one that is, and it wasn't Mr Farage. It was the Tory defector Douglas Carswell, who told the BBC yesterday that the party now needed a fresh face at the top. In a moment we'll speak to the UKIP party chairman, but first our man Ross Hawkins has been to Thanet in Kent, where Mr Farage stood and lost, and where UKIP's grip on the first and only district council it controls now seems to be under threat.
On this stretch of Kent coast, it is UKIP who are in control of the district council, at least their first such victory.
Nigel Paul Farage, UKIP, 16,026.
When Nigel Farage failed to get elected in Thanet, the triumph of UKIP's council candidates there, who won, backing the reopening of the local Manston airport, was a consolation. Now they are under threat. That was the sound in October of a protest by campaigners unhappy there'd been no progress under UKIP on the airport. The politics of passion and protest, so powerful for the party over the years, beginning to turn against them. The campaigners' cause helping to see 6 councillors defect from UKIP already.
Only this morning, we've been at a hospital appointment, and only this morning we were talked to by one of the members of staff there, a nurse, voted UKIP because of the Manston issue and will not be voting UKIP again. You know, and we hear this over and over and over.
They've had a short-term gain. They've used the passion of the people of Thanet to obtain their position. Now it's going to work against them.
Helen Smith and Konnor Collins, UKIP no more. With a ward by-election coming up, they think the party's first council could slip from its grasp within months.
And I get phone calls on a regular basis, as do my other colleagues, from ex-colleagues in UKIP. They are looking to move. I wouldn't be at all surprised that this time next year it is probably a Conservative-controlled council.
On the seafront, I meet UKIP's leader here, Cllr Wells. He decided against accepting the backing of a US firm that had offered to underwrite a compulsory purchase intended to get the airport going. He wasn't convinced by the strength of the financial guarantees that had been offered. And he is in an unusual position for a UKIP man, explaining how populist campaigning critics have got it all wrong.
There is an irony in that. Many UKIPers are natural protesters and they have a bit of trouble shifting to be the establishment. And I think that's been part of the issue we've had with some of those defectors. But, you know, we have to do things properly because we are carrying forward and dealing with the debts of the people who didn't do it properly before.
An uncomfortable thing shifting to be the establishment. There's been, he admits, a steep learning curve.
And people are finding it hard to hold their nerve. They find it easier to walk away and scream and shout in the corner than actually square their shoulders and take the responsibility. That's for their conscience, not mine.
That UKIP winner in Thanet doesn't sound particularly happy. The loser here in May, though, shows every sign of a man rather enjoying himself on the national stage provided by the EU referendum debate.
Now let me tell you, old son. Let me tell you, I heard that...
There at the Oxford Union. But his problems are mounting in this bit of England. Up the coast in Clacton, his sole MP, Douglas Carswell, says UKIP needs a fresh face. And if it loses this council, Nigel Farage's many critics will ask whether behind a high-profile leader, their party is struggling.
Ross Hawkins reporting there. And listening to that is the chairman of UKIP. He's joining us on the line from Barnstaple this morning. Steve Crowther. Morning to you, Mr. Crowther.
Good morning.
It's not going terribly well for UKIP at the moment, is it?
No, I think it's going very well.
Really? You've got a man, your only MP, saying the leader should go, and your only council you may lose control of.
Well, I think Cllr Wells gave a very clear explanation of the issues down in Thanet, and you know these are complex issues, and the Manston issue clearly is something that divides opinion down there.
I'm just puzzled by how you say it's going well, given that situation.
Well, broadly speaking, we are continuing to progress. You know, we took control of the council. We had 4 million votes in the general election. Our poll ratings are holding up since the general election, which was against all predictions. You know, political life is not without its speed bumps.
Speed bumps is a good description. Don't the people who voted for you, 4 million as you say, deserve a little bit better than a leadership soap opera from a party with only one MP?
Yes, I think this is very unhelpful. As the party chairman, it's not something I relish, and I think there is a time and a place to have discussions about the leadership of the party, but I don't think that on the eve of an EU summit and on the BBC is either of those.
What do you think Mr. Carswell is up to? Because he says he doesn't want the leadership for himself, and he says he hasn't got anybody lined up for it.
Yes, I mean Douglas is an independent thinker. It's his principal characteristic as a politician, and that's what he's going to do.
So what's he up to?
Well, I think he's just voicing his view.
Just musing aloud.
I think he is, and as I say, musing aloud is all very fine and dandy, but it's not very helpful if you're trying to maintain some sort of party direction.
I think he's a bit cleverer than that, isn't he? Mr. Carswell is saying, look, Nigel Farage has peaked. UKIP has peaked under his leadership, and it's time he started again.
If he is saying that, then that's absolutely wrong. Interestingly, on the day in which that interview was released, equally released was a survey showing that Nigel's popularity or satisfaction ratings amongst UKIP voters is at 93%.
Yes, but that's the point. It's amongst UKIP voters, and Mr. Carswell's saying you can't appeal to anybody else.
Well, that's not strictly true either, because his ratings amongst just members of the public are actually pretty high as well.
Okay, you say it was not the time and place. What is the time and place to discuss Mr. Farage's leadership?
Well, within the party, these are conversations that one has. All political parties have conversations about how it's going, but these are things that ought to be held within the party. And Douglas is a member of the National Executive Committee, and the NEC will be wanting to talk to him about this in January.
Oh, what? They'll summon him in and say,
no, he's a member.
Shut up.
He is a member, so he'll be there.
You said the National Executive will want to be speaking to Mr.
Well, they will be, yes.
What do they want to say to him? Do they want to say, tell us about how you want to get rid of Nigel Farage, or are they going to say, Mr. Carswell, shut up, will you?
They will be wanting to talk about, really, the cohesion of the important thing that we're trying to do, which is to run a really coherent and cohesive campaign to leave the European Union. And this has been going very well. The polls are moving in our direction. And as I say, the timing issue yesterday was that this news was released actually on the day in which we were celebrating the utter collapse of the Prime Minister's negotiating position in Europe, where he went away full of beans and saying he was going to talk all night till he got a deal, and came back saying they've agreed to talk some more about whether or not I can have a deal. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Well, I hear you say again and again timing. If, and it is quite a big if, of course, you lose the referendum, if Britain chooses to stay in, to remain in the EU. Well, just humour me. Humour me for a second, because the opinion polls suggest at the moment that it will. Is that the time and place for UKIP to consider Nigel Farage's future and indeed the party's future?
Oh, I'm sure that there are milestones along the road. The party will consider lots of things after the referendum. We will win the referendum, and after that, we will then have to consider what our role then is. Because just having a referendum, of course, we then have to hold the feet of the government and the European Union to the fire to make sure that they fulfil on the wishes of the electorate. So there will be, there are always these moments along the road where there are great issues to be discussed. So yes, of course, we will look at ourselves after the referendum and say, OK, what is our next major challenge?
Well, Mr. Farage quit after his prediction that you would sweep to the balance of power after the general election was proved to be wrong.
I think it's a slight overstatement.
Maybe he'll. Well, he kept telling us you were going to have the balance of power, but anyway.
He said we might.
OK, maybe he should consider quitting if you don't win the referendum. That would be very much in character for him, wouldn't it?
Well, the reason why the party said to Nigel when he came to us immediately after the general election and said, look, I promised to offer you my resignation, here it is. And we said, no, this is inappropriate and we don't want it. And we want you to stay as leader, is because Nigel is the number one figure in this country in terms of understanding why it is we need to be outside the European Union, why we will thrive, what is wrong with it and how it is holding us back. Now, that meant we wanted him to be running that campaign, and after the referendum, that campaign doesn't, those issues don't go away. After the referendum, we then have to either hold the government's feet to the fire, or we have to battle back. And, at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the first.
Steve Crowther of UKIP, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's 20